All right. So the last time we spoke, it was about, I guess, the beginning of a conversation about mentorship.
Yeah. Yeah.
What direction would you want to take it this time,
Uh,
or anything that's changed since the last time we've spoken?
Nothing really that's changed. There's something that I've been really digging into that has I'm not going to say shifted perspective. I just learned something. As an adult, as adults, especially as men, the thing that we suck at is accepting mentorship. Like we have as we grow, it's a thing that is most common among black men. You grow up and you get into leadership capacities in some respect,
Mm-hmm.
right? So think about so many people who make like professional sports or music deals, right? They usually come from single parent households. They had to grow up fast. Um, and I'm talking about like a generation, say like a LeBron, take a Jay-Z, Denzel Washington, this era, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you take their kids came from the area of privilege perspective. Bronny is in the NBA because he saw his dad do it literally his whole life. You know what I mean? Like Beyonce and Jay Z's kids are gonna do what the crap ever they want to do because they see their parents in multiple avenues. John David Washington is acting now because he had two parents as actors. He knows how to handle the Hollywood life. There's a perspective that you have to have as a person, especially as an adult, um, to understand that even though you're in a leadership capacity, you don't necessarily know everything. And
Right.
there's times that you just need an additional hand, another eye. But we also suck at swallowing pride enough to accept the fact that we don't know everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's something like my buddy Terrence started this thing called Kill Pride Club, which is basically a group, this collective of men who really just unpack like sincere issues that exist among men, right? Things like what our expectations are from women. What are women's
That's a
expectations
good one.
from us? Like, um, of course, we talk about pride, like it's kill pride, but the avenue is talking about how pride builds in everyday spaces and how we have allowed for so long for pride to be the overwhelming aspect. But if we are honest with ourselves, we can just swallow pride for like half a second and just think about like, what is it that I don't know? What is it that I'm hiding? What am I trying to keep to myself? What am I trying to pretend that doesn't exist, but actually does? And it's holding me back in certain avenues of my life, but I wish I could really let it go.
Mm.
If you've never been in that space or had someone who can walk you through teaching you how to let stuff go, you're just stuck. And it's a odd place to be. It's a very hard place to be. Sometimes it's really awkward because folks will call you out on it. It's like, bro, you're a little insecure about X. You're like, no, I'm not. But in your mind, you're like, dang, man, somebody figure me out. Pride doesn't let you say, yeah, you're right. I need help with that. You
Man,
know what I
it's
mean?
it's crazy you say that because probably the last year and a half, I've made myself more aware of things that I can change.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
people would tell me stuff, and although I may not see it or realize it, doesn't mean that it's not happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I kind of make myself aware of that. So if, for example, you tell me something like, "Hey, I notice you do this a lot," I'm not gonna combat that. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just like, all right, and just try to be cognizant of it
Yeah.
for the next time. But that pride thing, like, man, I battle with that for a little bit as it relates to my skill set.
Mm-hmm.
And I spoke about this, I think, with Kevin in a previous episode,
Okay.
very briefly about imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And, like what, because I started to feel like that, like having all of these
Yep.
skills,
Mm-hmm.
and then people just not like hitting me up. But then they would always like call me when things are going to
Wrong.
hell.
Yeah.
So it like put me in a weird space, and I had to like sit down and evaluate myself, and was like, okay, maybe this. a little bit of pride there,
Hmm.
me knowing that I know how to do this particular thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I've reached a point where if no one calls me, I'm fine with it. If people call me, okay. It doesn't even matter anymore. Like I have so much other things that I can put my focus into,
Hmm.
and one of them is mentorship,
Hmm.
just mentoring the young ones. And I would not be able to do that if I didn't tackle the issue with pride.
Yeah. I think a thing that goes along with like mentorship and pride, when you think about mentoring somebody, you are basically pouring into them information.
Yourself.
Yeah, your stuff, yourself, but real information, life skills, data, however you want to quantify it, you're pouring that into them so that it furthers the next generation, essentially so that they can be better, right? But we also unconsciously pour on generational trauma that way too,
Mm,
because we don't allow pride to just subside for a minute. You know what I mean? So my wife, you met my wife.
yeah.
My wife holds no punches.
No,
She
she
is
does not.
no, she does not. She is about as candid as they come. And there are times where she'll say to me, Jay, you know you do X. You know you're just like this. You know you do this just like your dad. And the thing that gets me, it's always a trigger. When she says, you know you are just like something, and I'm like, no, I am not. And it caught me one day because I was gonna be protective. I'm immediately going on the defensive. And she said, I can't remember exactly what it was. And my pride was like, no, you're right. You're right. I don't really know what to do about that. And I told her, let me think about it. I need to figure out where that came from. Like
Man,
it hit me. And I thought for a minute, like, first of all, the first part of me was like, I hate it when she's right. I really hate it when she's right. But then the other part of me was like, you know what? I don't want my kids going on with this.
no.
Nah, can't I just as much as I want to pour into them the goodness of life that I've gotten from my parents, my grandparents, my mentors, my uncles, everybody. I want to pour that goodness into my kids, but I also want them to understand that you can also take some things like generational trauma along with it. I don't want you to take that. Let's leave this, let's make it a point to leave this right here. And we're going to pack it up nicely. Thank you for getting me to this point. I don't need to carry you no more. I'm out. And we keep going.
Man, I feel like the pride thing is it is what because in the previous episode we talked about, probably not being able to, or not rather like people not doing it, not being mentors, and also I feel like that's because they can't.
Mm-hmm.
Like now that I thought about it since our last talk, like they can't.
Yeah.
It's hard for them too because they probably had a mentor and they didn't heed what that person said, or in the case that you're making this generational trauma there that needs to be dealt with.
Yeah.
And so now it's like we have a generation of kids that doesn't have a mentor because we all need counseling.
All right. Take it from someone who studied human behavior and mental health in school. Everybody needs it. There's an entire line of therapy for therapists because therapists need therapy.
Mm,
There's so many specialties, people who have dealt with like childhood sexual abuse, abandonment issues, people who have control issues, of obsessive compulsive disorders, all the above. Like there's specialties for nearly everything out there. There isn't one specifically for pride, but I mean, it doesn't take much for someone to need therapy. Everybody needs therapy. There's no person on earth that can go through whatever we live through for our entire time span and say, oh, I need zero counseling. I don't need any guidance. I don't need any help. I don't need to talk this through with anyone. I don't need to sort through my emotions. I don't need to figure out why when I hear certain music, it makes me feel this way.
mm,
Or if someone pushes back on a desire of mine, it makes me push back even harder. So I ultimately manipulate to get what I want. Like, why am I this way? Why do I think this way? Why has this become a thing? Why is that my instinctive reaction? is likely from something from your past that you either just took as regular life. You just take it like, I seen other people do it. I seen this person do it. I've never felt the consequence for it. So why should I stop now? You know, everybody could use therapy because everybody has a thing.
Yeah.
And regardless of what your thing is, like my thing is insecurity. For all of my skill sets and capabilities, every time, for those that don't know, I work in production. So audio production, live events, video production, I can produce, edit, basically anything to do with a live show, I can do it. And every time I sit at a piece of equipment, I sit there insecure like a mug, like I have no fucking clue what I'm doing right
Man, and I'm the opposite.
now. I am terrified. Like, why am I here? What am I doing? What's happening? Did I do that right? What in the world is going on? And I hit a button like, God, please make it show up. Please let this mic turn on. Did the lights come on? Whew, thank Jesus. Like in
You're
my mind,
overthinking it.
oh yes, God. In my mind, I go to the depths of hell. Like, what is the worst possible scenario that can happen? And I doomsday things in my mind before I even start something.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that because that's how I approach production as well. I doomsday think
Yeah,
everything,
yeah.
but then in the time frame I have, I'm trying to future proof. I'm trying to get my system to a point where if doomsday were to happen, I
Mm-hmm.
can still operate it.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's like it's a but I also had to train myself to do that.
yeah,
In the beginning, it was not that.
yeah.
It would probably be in the realm of like your insecurity.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to kind of flip that
Yeah,
and say, well, okay, I'm gonna think this anyway.
yeah,
So let me just try to be as comfortable with this situation and this insecurity as I possibly could be
yeah.
and just make it positive instead of keeping it negative.
One of my mentors, Jamel Ware, said, Jason, even if you're insecure, if you lead with confidence, people will follow. And if you have to borrow the confidence of others till you are confident yourself, I will never. I think I was 23 when Jamel told me that. I'll never forget it. And the situation, I was just learning to edit. My church was doing a broadcast, right? So at the time, church broadcast things were kind of big. We
Mm-hmm.
got a nationwide time slot, and I'm overthinking things through hell and high water, like down to the frame that the graphic build correctly. Is the font correct? Does it fit? Is it scaled? Is the colors right? That cut was weird. Like the inner perfectionist in me was on 15 all the time, and I would talk to Jamel every now and then, like, bro, I am hella insecure about this. And he's like, don't be. You already do it. Just walk into it with the confidence that you know you got it. And if you got to borrow my confidence, I build rundowns for you to follow and you haven't missed. Even if even the things that I miss, you have the eye to pick up on and to create. You've done it already. There's no reason for you to be insecure. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, it is. I got all the reasons. Look at this. Feels like, the little cartoons they have for scroll. I can
Right.
pull you out and pull you out a scroll. Like, here's all the reasons why I'm insecure, Jamal. I can prove it to you. And he's like, nah, man, if you have to borrow somebody's confidence, that was like when we worked together at first, it would be me, you, Adam, and Eric on the show. When I was insecure, I was like, I'm looking around the room. Who feels good about it? Whose security can I borrow for a minute? All right, we're going to ride on Trivano's confidence. We're going to ride on Eric's confidence. We're going to ride on Adam's.
Oh,
Because at this point,
Adam
I
was
have,
when everything was gloom and doom. Adam was the only person where it
yeah,
was like,
unshakable.
yeah, like everything would be going to hell.
Yeah. And he's like, yep, it's burning, but we'll be all right. And I'm like, hey, what the hell? Do you
To
not
this
see
day, I
this?
still don't understand that.
Yeah, dude was I admire, I really do. That's one thing. I told Adam, I admire the fact that when things are literally falling apart, you're like, well,
Yeah,
let's keep it moving. And I'm
yeah.
like,
Like
dude, how?
I think he had messed up a record or something,
Mm-hmm.
and he fixed it. But like at that time, he was just like, "Oh well, I messed up a record," and that was it. Like that was as far as that negative thought went, and he
Yeah,
just fixed it. And from where it started, that's where it started.
yeah. I
Man, that
mean,
is crazy to me.
yeah,
I
it's
can't do that.
yeah, me either. And I think about those moments now where I just have to borrow the security of other people for a moment. Um, And I realize now, like, roles are reversed a little bit. So, my circumstance. Recently, I lost my job. I'm looking for another job now. In the job search, I got a couple leads. There's some things that are going on. We got some savings. We got my severance that's coming from a job, a couple other things. So financially, it's not that big of a deal at the moment. My wife is worried about a lot of stuff. So she has to borrow off of my confidence. What I am not telling her is that, like, opportunity number one dried up. So that's probably not going to happen. Opportunity number two is a long shot. Opportunity number three, we'll see. Still floating out there, 50-50 shot. But I recognize in, like, what, another 60 days, we're not going to have healthcare. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I got to figure that out. That's a big deal when you're married with two kids. You know, we are going to start having to dip into savings because my severance is going to run out. So, all of those things, I'm looking right now just to stop the preventive measures of having to dip into emergency funds just to float everyday life. But she's having to borrow off of me right now. So if I come to her and I'm like, I have no flipping clue how we're gonna do this, babe. I'm gonna have to go push carts at Walmart or something. Like, we're gonna have to get desperate. That's going to flip her out. I
Man,
know it.
and I'm in the same situation on the reverse side.
Okay.
So like
Okay.
my wife, she hasn't been working from what, March?
Wow.
From March. She does all of these interviews, makes it to the final round, but just never gets the
Man.
job. So who knows? By the time this episode drops, she might have a job, as well as she might not.
Mm-hmm.
But also, like, it taught me to be in control of my emotions.
Yeah.
Just like what you were saying, like I can't show her the stress that I'm actually going through.
Mm-hmm.
Like I make pretty good money, but at the same time, like women have needs.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
things that they need to have.
Mm-hmm.
So now you got to find extra on top of whatever it is that
Yeah.
you already budgeted for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so like just trying to do that and not tell her like I'm not sure where we're gonna get money from next month. Like I don't have any jobs lined up.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
how it usually is. It's like I don't know. I don't have anything lined up for December,
Yeah.
but I can't tell her that.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm not lying to her.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just reserving the thought of telling her for
Yeah.
her to be in that headspace.
Yeah. And it's a protective element. This is
Yes.
another part where that pride kind of boils up because you don't want her to flip out. But also, you need a space in which you can be vulnerable if you got to be.
Yeah.
And for people who are married, like, your marital
You got
relationship
to be
is
very
A1.
particular on what you put out.
Yeah. Because you don't want it to come out in different contexts. So,
Mm-hmm.
literally this morning, my wife and I talked about an opportunity. This is one that's like 30, 70 at this point. So, it will be me working for a previous boss. A minor, like, high career hierarchy, it's a minor step back, but it keeps a lot of other foundational things that we already have in place solidly in place. So I thought of it from, can I sacrifice like 5 grand a year? Yeah, I can do that. Will our benefits stay the same? Yep. I'll have a commute, not bad. I can work remote certain days. I don't really want to do Sunday mornings anymore, but I can sacrifice it for right now because all these other things will stay in place.
Right.
Plus, I'm not under the same stress that I was with the previous assignment. This is easy. I'm in a familiar environment, people that I know. I've been in this place before. This can work. If the opportunity presents, this can work. She looked at it as, why are you taking a step back? I'm like, I'm not taking a step back. I am thinking that even if I'm only here for like a year, this is something that holds our lives as we know it in a
Until
foundational
yeah.
place until we can get to the next thing. That's what I'm thinking about. And she's like, but you're going backwards. You're going to work with somebody that you worked for before. And I'm like, yeah,
I
but
mean,
consider,
man,
like,
we can literally have a whole conversation on just that
yeah,
part
yeah.
of how women think versus how men think.
Mm-hmm. And I know from my wife's standpoint, there's logic and then there's the rationalization, kind of the
Hmm.
overthinking and the emotional element of it, right? So I understand I understand her rationale, and she understands that I'm thinking very logically. It's just that those two things are on opposite paths right now. So, as much as I'm trying to get her to understand where I'm coming from, I also have to swallow it enough to understand where she's coming from. If I take this if it presents itself and I take this opportunity, it immediately presents stress in her mind because she's like, "Why did we
We
go
starting.
backwards?
We're
Why are we
starting
starting
from
over?"
square one.
Yeah, and I'm thinking we're not starting from square one. We're actually starting from like square four.
Yeah.
I'm just strategically planning. It's a long game. It's the long game. I am looking. It's kind of like how golfers hit certain shots for certain holes in the early part of the round so they can be aggressive in the later part. That's all I'm doing. I'm just thinking long game, not short game, long game.
Yeah.
You know, and while I feel in my mind this is the best route for us to take, I have to sit for a minute and say, is it really? What are you thinking about? What makes you uncomfortable about it? What makes are you even encouraged a little bit about it? Do you see where I'm really coming from with this? Or is it something cloudy? Can I clarify something? Giving her that space, but also asking for that space from her for me is beneficial for our relationship because I want her to understand that I'm not just haphazardly making decisions. I've thought this through. So even if I'm sacrificing 5 grand a year, it's 5 grand. I can make that up in probably a month. But it's not about the money for me. It's about the fact that every other part of our life that is very, very structured right now will stay that way. We don't have to rebuild hardly anything. And the biggest sacrifice physically is going to come on my end. It's a
Yeah.
what extra 15-minute commute. I got to sit through traffic. I got what one extra remote or in office day than I have right now. Ain't no big deal. But this is like across the street from where we worked together, where we had the same commute. Like you know what I'm dealing with, and you also know the person that I worked with before. Like you've known all the other people that I've worked with. You get along with this person way better than the other three.
Of
So,
course.
if any situation, this is the most ideal of scenarios. So it's just getting her to understand that, but also allowing myself to look at it from her perspective, not just seeing it strictly through mine and saying my way is the way that's going to benefit everybody. I'm not seeing something that you're seeing. I got to swallow pride in this moment. What is it that you see that I'm not seeing or that I'm overlooking or I'm not giving enough attention to? What's that? Let's figure that out. Because if we
Mm.
can come together on that, wherever I land career wise, I don't want home life to be a bucket of shit. Excuse my language. I don't want that to be crazy as soon as I walk in the door because then I'm not going to want to come home.
Right.
You know? So all these things are about just maintaining a measure of balance and not allowing my ego and the idea of being a head of household entitled overwhelm me in my thought process to be kind of negatively charged with the idea that only my way goes. It's not just my way. It's 4 people under my roof. Every decision that I make affects them some kind of way. So I have to be conscious enough to not just look at my own conveniences or the things that affect just me, but I have to think about how this affects my sons and my wife and my mother-in-law. Like, will the kids have to come home on a bus more frequently? How are they getting to practices? Can I get home through traffic? What if Dory's out of town? Like, there's all these other consequential elements that fall in place that would be a little bit more inconvenient than what I'm dealing with right now. But if that's a tiny bit of a sacrifice that can be a small pivot for everybody else, cool, cool.
Man, I think the conversation is more straight towards why we don't have enough mentors
Mm-hmm.
because of pride.
Mm-hmm.
What was the other one? Communication
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes even partnership.
Mm-hmm.
Like just you dealing with your wife, how do you mentor someone if you're always trying to be in control of things behind the scenes? So there's a lot to unpack in just those three things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, okay, now when you start to actually mentor a person, now you got to deal with what they going through as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they might not be able to, if you're mentoring them in like camera work on a Sunday or something,
Mm-hmm.
they might not be able to make it every Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
You can't dog them for that. You can't be angry at them for that. You have to have the conversation and try to figure out, okay, what's going on with you? Is it work? Is it home? Like what is it? You have to
Mm-hmm.
be cognizant in what they're going through versus what you're going through.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and this is where the partnership comes in. Sometimes it might be a situation with somebody that I cannot help them, but you can.
Mm-hmm.
So like I would hit you up and be like, "Hey Jason, I don't have any expertise in this area. This person is going through this thing. Can you talk to them?"
Yeah. Yeah.
See, now you see where the partnership comes
Yep.
in. So now you axed out the pride,
Mm-hmm.
communication is better,
Mm-hmm.
and now it's a partnership.
Yeah.
Not with just you and the person helping that person who you're mentoring, but even the mentoree
Yeah.
is a partnership.
Yeah. It
Because
is.
just looking at what they're going through, if you can help them, it might be something that you learn from where you can help someone else.
Yeah.
So like you taking the responsibility of talking to them about something that you have more information about than me,
Mm-hmm.
just me seeing that, I can learn from that. And just being open and available to actually do that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the bigger things is communication and understanding that communication is more than just words, right?
definitely.
Communication comes to like your body language, your emotions, your um we would when we worked together, we had texts that would come from other properties,
Oh my goodness.
and I would, me being the supervisor of our tech teams at the time, if someone came from another property, I would tell them, look, goal number one today, give a shit, or at least act like you do,
Yeah.
because what we do right now hinges on whether or not they're satisfied.
Right.
But if they're satisfied, our jobs are so much easier.
Man, and people just loved coming to our property.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because we liked them. I'm gonna be honest. Some of them I was just kind of like questionable,
Yeah. Yeah.
but they would actually work when they came at our property. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like a lot of that was how we treated them from they walked through the door.
Yeah.
So although we might have had issues internally with what's going on with
Mm-hmm.
them at other properties, when they came to us, they were fine.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So they walked through the door. Hey, what's up? This is what's going on today.
Mm-hmm.
Let's try to knock this out as quick as possible,
Mm-hmm.
and we can just chill out for the rest of the day. Like
Yeah.
that was always our thing,
Yep. Yep.
and
And it was
they
always like
loved
a
that.
an easy give and take. So from our teams, we come in, hey, we got to reset half the spaces in here. It's on paper, it's 8 hours. In reality, we can do it in 5.
Yeah,
If we hit 5, y'all go home early. We'll pay you for 8 anyway. We show people that we care. I give enough of a shit about your life
man.
for you.
Home, and I mean work and home balance.
Yeah.
Like that's a real thing.
Yeah. It is.
That's a especially in our space
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
events, man. I still do events.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm showing up at 5, 6 a.m. I'm
Mm-hmm.
getting off at 11, 12
Yep.
a.m.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
it's a full day.
Mm-hmm.
And so now picture doing show after show after show after show.
Yeah.
You have no work home balance
Yeah.
at all.
Yep. And it gets to a point where it's physically exhausting, it's mentally and
Very.
emotionally exhausting. And I think a thing that shines through a lot is when you have a supportive team like we had, right? It became easier to lean on each other when you knew that you had the trust and the support there.
And that was the partnership of it.
Yeah.
And then once we got in that space, there was no ego, there was no pride.
Exactly.
It was like, all right, you know more than me in this thing, I'm gonna learn from you.
Right.
Or if I know more than you in this thing, you're learning from me.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody just kind of just worked together. It was
Yep.
never an issue. We never had an issue.
Mm-mm. And we all work toward the common goal. What does our client need? deliver what the client needs, make sure that they walk out of here happy, smile on their face. That was the thing. That was the give a shit element,
Yeah,
right?
while still taking care of your own. Like
Yeah.
Mike made sure that we were good.
Yep. Yep. And it all this, I'm glad you said that because the key tenet is leadership. It came from the top.
Hmm.
Mike, as our director, was the person who exemplified that from the very beginning. And Mike was also the person that would say, hey, at 4 o'clock, I'm out. If you need something, call, but don't need something because I might not pick up the phone. But he was honest.
Yeah,
He
like
was honest, but he also empowered us in situations to say, look, if something's going down, I trust you to make the
yeah,
decision
to
that's
make the
best for
ultimate
everybody.
decision. Yeah.
So go ahead and make that decision. Just keep me involved in the communication loop, but go ahead and do what you got to do to make sure that we get the job done. Perfect. For someone who runs through life with insecurities like I do, that little tiny measure of confidence is all I need to go from 0 to 100. I was good after that. And
And then for me, it's like, companies, they're watching the clock.
mm-hmm,
So if you're supposed to work 8 hours, they expect for you to just work eight
8 hours.
hours.
Yeah.
You might be in a situation where something is broken. You have an event tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
You need the extra hour and a half, 2 hours to fix a thing to
Yeah.
make this event go as smoothly as possible.
Yeah.
Mike was probably the only person where it was like, I don't care how long you're here, as
Mm-hmm.
long as you get it done.
Yep.
If you're only here for 1 hour in an 8 hour shift, you get it done, just leave, just go home.
Yep.
But if you have to be here longer than 8 hours, just get it done.
Yeah.
Like we can deal with all of the other stuff later.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like we had the conversation the other day. Like there was a issue when we had with projectors.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Man, we were supposed
Yeah.
to get off at like 8 o'clock. I'm there till 2 a.m. trying to fix this broken projector.
Mm-hmm.
Back went home, came back at 5 a.m. Still trying to fix this broken projector for a show that starts at 9.
Yep. I remember that.
Luckily, I did fix it,
Yeah.
but like just having like that peace of mind that okay, I can do that as long as it's not for personal gain and it's more for just making sure the show goes good. And
Mm-hmm.
I also know that Mike was the type of director who would probably be like, all right, we're not doing too much tomorrow. I see you put in extra hours a few days ago. Take the day
Take that.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The reciprocation. That's the
Yeah.
biggest thing. And when you have supportive partnerships, this is at work, this is at home, this is among friendships. When you have that supportive partnership, period, that's the thing that helps you amplify life and then uh, better reflect the standards that you're trying to portray. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So you can only portray what you honestly have experienced, right? Both of us played basketball. Neither one of us made it to the NBA. I cannot mentor a kid right now on how to make it to the league.
No.
I can't. Best I can get you is a D2 scholarship right now, homie. But that was my experience. That's what I knew. So I knew I knew the channels. I know all the processes. I know it's so different now than when I played basketball with 20 years ago. But I know all of those things now are remotely different, but there's still like a foundational path that'll get you from point A to point B. Now, at point B, this is when I turn you over to Coach King. Coach King is the
Mm.
person who works with NBA players. He's the person who's developing skills. He's the person with coaching relationships and front office relationships. He was chaplain for the Hawks for a couple of years. But this is the person whose everyday life is professional basketball. I can't claim to do what Coach King does, but I have the relationship with Coach King to say, hey, I got this kid, man. I think he's worth it. And Coach would ask me, what makes you think that he's worth it? And I have to go through like he's not just
Yeah.
this, he's not just that. He
Man,
amplifies here. He's this, he's
he's
that. He's
beyond what
mature.
I can teach him right
Yeah.
now. Like I've taught him everything that I know,
Yep.
and he's beyond that.
Yep.
So he needs someone who's going to take him to the next
Exactly.
level.
But because we have that trust, I can tell Coach, I've got him to here. He needs you to go beyond there.
Mm.
And Coach will say, cool, I got him. That's it. Or I don't know. Let me see. Either way it goes, I know I've reached my capacity, but I have someone that I can then lend toward who is better than me in this scenario. So pride for me says stop at the point to where Coach King needs to get involved.
Man, that is crazy. That's a bar right there. And I think that's another issue that we're facing why we don't have a lot of mentors. There's not a lot of people willing to do what it takes to be, or rather master what they're good at.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, like it's video, it's cameras, it's switchers.
Mm-hmm.
I know enough to a certain extent to actually be able to mentor.
Mm-hmm.
You have people who just focus on one small detail.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you mentor? How do you mentor a person in cameras when you only know one camera?
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like
Yeah.
you don't understand cameras. You just understand how to use this camera.
Yeah.
So you're not trying to master your skills in learning other cameras.
Mm-hmm.
And that might just be DSLRs and mirrorless cameras. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you mastered that, you can teach a person up to that level.
Yeah.
Then when we start getting into the Buranos and the big cinema cameras and
Mm-hmm.
broadcast cameras,
Mm-hmm.
obviously you have to hand that off to someone who's a master of that or
Yeah.
who has enough knowledge to teach that. I
Mm-hmm.
think we're living in a world where people have not tried to master that thing.
Jack of all trade, master of none. I'm gonna tell you something Jamel told me at 19, 20 years old. We sat down. This was when Jamel first started working with our team at the time. So I'm hotshot kid that knows enough about everything to be dangerous. Right. So we sit down for context. My edit system was Avid Media Composer.
Mm,
So I'm looking at Media Composer and I'm like, I know this well enough to fake my way through it. Right. So Jamel says, all right, man, what do you want to do? And I start rattling off all this stuff and he's like, time out. What do you want to do? I start rattling my list slower this time. And he's like, nah. What I'm hearing now is Jack of all trade, master of none.
mm-hmm.
He said, there's nothing wrong with wanting to do all these things.
But
For
what
context,
is that thing?
yeah. For context, I started in the audio, so I was already enamored with audio. I knew it better than video at the time. So I'm thinking in the back of my mind, I still want to be a studio engineer. I might want to go on tour. I like live sound, mixing bands, all that stuff. But there's something captivating about the visual element. That's what I really want to do. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand it enough to be as good at it as I am in audio, but I can fake it well enough to make people believe that I really know what I'm good at. Jamel saw right through it. And he's like, okay, cool. You want to master it. This is what you really want to do? All right, cool. You have to learn every element of this thing,
Literally.
literally. And that for me, like I was in college for production at the time. I quit school. I was learning more sitting with Jamel at that edit station every day. It was the most frustrating 3 months of my life. But that 3 months set off my entire career.
Man, and the story with me is I started working for a production company in the Bahamas called Zamar
Mm-hmm.
Productions. And my boss at that time, or rather my lead, Bentley Jones,
Okay.
he probably had the most impact on me in this space
Mm,
because he taught me what even up to this day I haven't seen people teaching a lot of. And it's something so simple: signal flow, input management, output management, destinations.
well, when you break it down
You
like that,
you see
it's
what I mean? Like
masterful. Yeah, masterful.
so in anything you learn, if you start to learn in that sequence, it's easier to learn it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say he was an LED master,
Okay.
like LED wall master. So the first thing I learned how to do was LED walls,
Mm-hmm.
which is crazy for me to think now. There's a lot of people who don't even know how to do that.
Yeah.
And then I kind of moved towards switching.
Mm-hmm.
So he put me in the realm of switchers. And it wasn't even like he put me there. Like I just worked with him. We did a lot of stuff, but I gravitated towards that one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he sat me down and he was like, okay, this is what you're interested in. And I was like, no, I want to do LED walls. And he's like, nah, I'm gonna just teach you the switcher first, and
Yeah.
then let's see where it goes from
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And he taught me signal flow, input management, output management, destination in 1 week.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to this day, like everything I think of falls in that sequence,
Mm-hmm.
the exact sequence.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like super easy to learn, but just having him as a mentor to like have the experience to
Yeah.
take me that far.
Yeah.
Everything else I learned on my own. So I learned how to like work with cameras and audio and all that other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not my thing.
Mm-hmm.
It just happened to be a part of what I was doing in the realm of video switchers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like it started out with what was it, a Barco Image Pro.
Okay.
It was a Barco Image Pro. Then it went to like bigger Barco processor. I think it was the first, not the E2,
Mm-hmm.
the first Event Master, which was like this big box, and you had to do two of them to get 16 outputs or something like that. It was
Okay.
something like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And then it evolved into the analog way ascender,
Mm-hmm.
the Christie Spider, the E2, the E3, the 4A that's in the other room,
Yeah.
raw switchers. And like I can confidently say that I know probably more switchers than most people in my space.
I can second that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I second that.
But just knowing that and having the foundation
Mm-hmm.
in which Bentley kind of pushed me into, I'm able to mentor the same way that he did with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if I didn't know enough, if he had just taught me that one thing
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't build my skills afterwards, I wouldn't be able to mentor because I would only be good at the Barco Image Pro.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like what Jamel and Bentley did for the two of us is the same investment that you want to push over into other generations. Like Jamel didn't just teach me Avid Media Composer. He didn't just teach me composition. Jamel taught me how to tell a story.
Yeah.
Every time
And he taught you life in the process.
yes. He said everything that we do, Jason, has some element of story to it.
Mhm.
Everything. If you get to understand what a person's story is, then you get to understand how to tell that story. Then the composition, the creation of everything
How
that
to
you do at
shoot
that
that,
point
how to edit that.
is infinitely easier. He said the basic foundation of cameras kind of works the same. All of them are basically the same functions. You have little nuances between brands that are different. Learn the nuances, figure that stuff out. Audio, you know how to pick up sound adequately. Look at this scenario right here. We got two microphones. What most people don't see is there's a boom mic right above us. It's the
Oh yeah.
backup. Always have a backup.
Always have a backup.
Always have a
Yes.
backup. But he said you understand that. You know how to build something. You know how to create situations in which people feel comfortable. When people are comfortable, they open up. When people open up, they tell stories. When they tell stories and you get people comfortable enough to open up to you to really dictate what it is that they're looking for, your job becomes infinitely easier because now you understand the expectation. That's it. And I thought at the time, I'm like,
That's a life lesson right there.
it is a life lesson, but I'm thinking like, bro, this is some bull. I
Of
just,
course, of course,
I
of
mean,
course.
you
You're
can't.
thinking that at
Well,
like at the
yeah,
beginning
man,
stages.
you can't tell my hard-headed 20-year-old behind nothing.
But I'll tell you
But
what, though, 10 years down the line, when you actually really get into it and you have to be the mentor,
yeah,
all of those stuff come back, and it's
yeah.
like, man, he made so much sense.
10 years down the line, when I was training the person that ultimately replaced me, I told that person, look, you have to understand this crowd. You have to understand. At that point, I was working for a church. We had 5 campuses and we had very different demographics for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
One thing is not going to work for everybody. You have to understand how to sway it just a little bit to get people to engage. This one crowd is just very cut and dry. This
Right.
other crowd likes the frou-frou and the hurrah, right? So you have to understand between the two what exactly you need to communicate, right? So he would this guy I was training. he would always ask, like, bro, why do you spend so much time on this? Why do you do this? Why are you going for this? And I said, when people walk through that door, they're gonna know what to expect.
That's what
Period.
you want.
Yeah. Every time somebody walks in here, they know what they're looking at. They know what they're gonna hear. Because that's what me and Keon put our energy into creating. We know exactly what folks are coming in here for. And we deliver on that mug. If you take this and even halfway play with it, people are gonna see through it and they're not gonna support you.
Yeah, because like one thing that Bentley taught me is that when people go to these events, they expect to see something.
Mm-hmm.
Give them the expectation, and after you've established that, then go beyond.
Mm-hmm.
So now, after you've given them what they expect to see, give them the wow factor.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that like that was a bar for me
Oh yeah.
that I
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah.
understand until I really got into space. And it was like, okay, we worked at a company that just wanted to do the bare minimum.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, okay, just give them what they expect.
Yeah.
It's gonna keep them coming back.
Yep.
But how you lock these people down and like get them into these long contracts and stuff is giving them the wow factor
Mm-hmm.
on top of that.
Yep. And
So
when we delivered, but people came back.
oh definitely. And they
Yeah,
would
man.
request us in particular.
Mm-hmm.
But we covered a lot as it relates to why we don't have a lot of mentors.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think, man? And I'm trying to figure out how to word this. How can we now change the narrative in helping to inspire and motivate people to do what it takes to be a mentor? I know that's a tough one. I'm thinking about how I'm gonna answer that.
Yeah. Um, First thing I think is instilling confidence within people to share what their experiences are and affirming the fact that their experience is enough. I met a guy named Antonio. He has a company that does pickleball
Oh,
throughout the
that's
North
dope.
Metro, right? Antonio looked like me. Black dude, locks. He's from South Georgia. He got a little country drawl to him. Kind of sound like this. This is the last person that you would expect to pop up and teach
And
pickleball
pickleball,
lessons
right?
anywhere. He has a logo on his t-shirt and on the back it says narrative changer. I freaking love that shirt because
I like that.
the
Narrative changer.
idea is that when you think about a pickleball lesson or you think about a tournament, the
You
last person that you would
immediately,
expect to
yeah.
see is Antonio running that thing, but it's Antonio. He changed the narrative of what people assume pickleball looks like.
Mm,
But he had the courage to look at pickleball and say, you know what, man? Some community need that. I think I could figure that out just as a game. Played baseball as a kid. So he's like, I'm athletic enough. I can figure that out. His wife, I can't remember what industry she worked in, but she helped him build a business, like the business element of it. He went out and shopped gear. He found teachers. He negotiated a equipment endorsement. Got everything he needed. He hosted one little like invitational tournament, but it was like a tutorial just to get this community of people around the idea of introducing them to the sport of pickleball
and it just
and
blew
how
up.
they could just have fun with it. We're not keeping score. We're not trying to usurp anybody. This ain't for a trophy. This is just for y'all to figure out how this joint works. It blew up. Absolutely blew up. And I love the fact that it blew up for him because just like it worked for him, it took him being courageous enough for 1 minute to think like this thing can work. From a psychological standpoint, your brain and your body don't understand sarcasm, but they do understand like positive and negative emotion. So if you like me, I would tell myself sometimes if I mess something up, like, oh God, I suck at this. And it's just me being sarcastic, yeah, kind of poking at myself, my perfectionist tendencies, right? But subconsciously, I am teaching myself that I'm really not good at it. And I
Mm,
keep making the same silly little mistake every time because there's security in the mistake. I understand now how to fix it. I get the security from not just making the mistake, but also fixing it and having the affirmation of someone seeing me do it. But just do the shit right the first time.
Right.
Pause for a minute when I know I'm about to misstep. What's the correct way to go? Okay, cool. Let me handle this. Problem averted. Mentally, emotionally, physically, I save time. I probably save money. There are so many things that can be skirted by just telling yourself, I got it. I can do it. My situation might not be perfect, but it's it's my situation. It's unique to me. This is what makes me who I am. If people see me and they see any element of my career and they say, "Hey man, I want to figure out how to do that." I had an intern. Her name is Kiara. Um, I adored the fact that she came to me one day with every insecurity that she had. She had a terrible relationship with a guy, so having males in authority positions sucked for her.
Mm-hmm.
And she worked for two guys, right? So I went to my boss and said, "Hey, I'm gonna take Kiara as kind of like a project. Just give me 90 days. Me and her. Everything that I do, I report to you, but I just need her to focus for like 90 days." And he was like, "Cool, you got 90 days." At the end of that 90 days, Kiara's confidence had grown so much by just telling her, "Hey, you got this. You got it. I have confidence in the fact that you will exceed what my expectation is. Here's how we're going to work this. I'm going to demonstrate to you what I'm expecting. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to demonstrate to you, I'm going to give you more than enough opportunities to ask me questions about it, to feel through it, to figure it out. But when I put you in a space to execute, I expect you to execute. I don't expect you to be perfect. I expect you to execute. I expect you to walk with the confidence that you got this." It was all she needed. She just needed somebody to say, "Hey, man, I trust you. You got it. You can
Man.
handle this."
And
Now, I mean, Homegirl's killing it. And I'm proud. I am so excited just to see her being her authentic self in situations and walking into spaces with confidence, walking out of them with confidence, secure in her work, secure in herself as a person. She got a boyfriend now. I'm like, good dang, your life took off. I need to take some
shout out
notes.
to Kiara.
Yeah, man. I mean, but it was just that. It was me being vulnerable enough for her in that moment to say, "Look, I'm not perfect. I haven't been. I've tried to portray myself to be perfect, but I'm not. I'm very far from it. But here's what I do know. I know these switches. I know composition. I know how the lighting that Weston sets up, how that affects my camera shots. I know these hits in this music. So the arrangement that Jared makes every week, I know exactly how to navigate around them. So now when people see something that comes from us, they see a cohesive element. They don't see somebody who is just cutting, 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 cutting. They see somebody who cuts with intention. I don't do anything just for the sake of being fancy. I do it for drawing people in. There's a message that comes through all of this. And if that message gets screwed up even one tiny way, it messes up the experience for everybody. The grand expectation is to deliver on that. My part of this is to deliver visually. I study every other element, so when it's time for me to deliver visually, I know exactly where I'm going, exactly what I'm doing. And I can tell everybody from cameras 1 through 8 exactly what we got to do. 1, here's your marching orders. 8, here's your marching orders. This is what we're going to do. Everybody cool? Cool. Let's go do it.
Man, that's dope to hear. Um, Usually at the end of podcasts, I ask a question like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Blah 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 blah. I'm not gonna do that today.
Okay.
I'm gonna switch it up a bit. If there was someone who wants to be a mentor, but I guess doesn't have the confidence to, or doesn't know how, like, what would be the steps, etc., etc. What would you tell them in one sentence? Like, if you just had to say one sentence to them,
Okay.
what would that be?
Tell yourself your story every day and look at who's listening.
See, that's why I have you on this show.
Yeah. Let me
That's
break that
okay.
down real quick. Tell yourself your story every day. Every day you build on who you are as a person. Every moment, every second, every decision, they're all made done with some measure of intention, right? But you never really know who's looking at you. So for somebody who spent you know, a good number of my life, good number of years of my life, around religious institutions, churches, I'm Christian specifically, but um, I want to make sure that everything that I do is a reflection of my faith, right? Not necessarily of a church or a religious system, but of my faith. So the ultimate tenet that Jesus taught was love, right?
Mm,
If I go around acting like some hateful asshole, people are going to look at me like, bro, you say one thing and you do another. Help this make sense. And I never know who's watching, right?
mm,
In a lot of situations, I'm a lot of the times the only male, if not the only male, one of very few black people. So I have to think consciously about how people view me, one from a stereotypical standpoint before they interact with me,
right.
but also from an experience standpoint because I'm in a space where people typically don't see folks who look like me. So I have to come with a certain measure of professionalism. I have to come with a certain measure of diction. I got to code switch a little bit. Like I can't just talk with the, kind of lazy Atlanta drawl. I have to throw on that good Mercer University education every now and then. And I have to present myself in a way that feels trustworthy to people who don't understand who I am. So I have to show people every day I am a kid from Southwest Atlanta. I came through the educational system of the city of Atlanta and the state of Georgia. It's probably not the best in the world, but I ended up getting a scholarship to college. I went through college. I took a long path, but I got my degree. I learned a lot from a lot of people who were willing to teach me. And now my responsibility is to demonstrate that to everybody else that I interact with. So when I interact with the people that I work with, it doesn't matter if you are the lowest person on the totem pole or the CEO. I'm going to treat everybody the same way, right? Because if at any point if some person looks at me and they want to determine how they feel about a certain instance based off of how I act, I want it to be the best thing. I want them to see me treat people with respect. I want them to see me treat people with honor. I want them to see me lead love first. Because if
Right.
I do that, if I demonstrate that, then people then see, oh, okay, I can examine the elements of homie's life and see that everything is consistent. That's it. And at some point in time, I have to swallow the fact that I have insecurities. I got to swallow the fact that I feel sometimes like I don't measure up. You talked about imposter syndrome earlier.
Yeah.
I have it like a mug. So, yeah. But I have to sit in a seat with confidence because I know somebody's looking at me. I have to draw on the confidence of others because I know somebody's drawing off of me. Last thing, quick situation that we were dealing with. I was working on a show at the Omni Atlanta, and we had content come last minute. It's insanely frustrating.
Oh, I know.
Insanely frustrating when you get a bundle of content and you spend time going through everything, sort everything to make execution easy, and
Mm.
then in the midst of that execution, someone drops a unplanned element right in the middle and says, "Hey, can you do this in like 2 minutes?" The heck? Instinct said, "No,
Oh,
go
so
somewhere."
I tell them no. This is a learning experience. I tell them no, but I also give them a time frame. So I'm like, no, I cannot do that right now.
Yeah,
But if you give me 10 to 15 minutes,
yeah,
I can get that in for you, have it checked and ready to go.
yep,
And I feel like that puts them at ease. Also, if you give them a time frame, it gives them the opportunity to stall for you.
mm-hmm, yep,
So that's what it opens up that conversation.
yep,
Because it's like, okay, we start in 5 minutes though. Maybe can we start 10 minutes later? And
yeah,
then I just talk for 5 minutes. So it's like you give them something to work off of.
yeah,
But
yep,
I completely understand that because like you're so engulfed in what's happening
mm-hmm,
in your space.
yep,
You have a switcher, you probably have like 8 laptops.
mm-hmm.
You got
I,
a Zoom you gotta send
yep,
out to. And
Yep.
then this person just comes in the midst of all of this
Mm-hmm.
and gives you a jump drive like, hey, we have 6 new presentations that we want to add
Mm-hmm.
to the slide deck. So like your first instinct is not thinking about like just trying to mediate the situation.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because like at the end of the day, you want the show to go perfect.
Exactly.
So
And
you have to tell them what it is you need
yeah.
for this show to go perfect. If I need 15 minutes, I'm letting you know
Mm-hmm.
that if I have to do this in less than 15 minutes,
Yeah.
there's a possibility your show is going to fail.
Yeah.
But I covered my ass by telling you I
Yep.
need 15 minutes.
Yep. Yep. It was one thing that I learned in school is called reflection. It happens if you go through therapy. It happens a lot. Your therapist will say something back to you just to ensure that they heard what you said right. So I use my degree in this moment, and I'm like, okay, what you said to me, your expectation right now is this new information to go live in 2. I can't do it in 2, but I can do it in 5.
Right.
Okay. Can you buy me 5? I think I can buy you 5. Cool. I only needed 3.
And in a lot of cases, they buy you more than the 5 that
Yeah.
you asked for. They would probably do like 8 to 10.
Yep. But in the time that I had to pivot, I was able to move everything around. I talked to my audio op. Hey, you got signal? We good here. Producer, we good. Cam op, we good. Hey, we rehearse thing A. We're going to pivot to thing B. Everybody follow me for 10 seconds. 10 seconds, we execute everything. At the end of it, the planner came back to me. I don't know how you did it, but I am so thankful. I'm so grateful you made this experience so easy. I thought, mission complete.
Well, I mean, you see how I navigate
Yeah.
like video switching. The person operating the switcher ultimately controls the show.
Mm-hmm.
If something goes wrong with the switcher, the show is
Yeah.
done.
Yeah. You're toast pretty much.
Like audio is something that you have the opportunity to fix.
Mm-hmm.
Video is something that's not forgiving.
Mm-hmm.
So like you could lose audio, people in the room can still hear you. Just speak louder.
Mm-hmm.
You lose video, people in the back of the room now they can't see you on an iMac
Mm-hmm.
or the stream. You just lost the stream, so people on like in other parts of the world or who just couldn't attend, they can't see you.
Yeah.
So it's like you always got to create backups.
Mm-hmm.
You always have to prepare for the unexpected. You
Mm-hmm.
have to expect the unexpected.
Yep.
So like in a situation like that, I would usually have an additional laptop. I'll have an
Mm-hmm.
additional laptop plugged into an extra input just for things like that.
Yep.
So I'm preparing for that.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone says, "Hey, I got X amount of, presentations or videos or whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is that I need imported. I need this done in 5 minutes."
Yep.
I can actually do that in 5 minutes
Mm-hmm.
because
Does not affect
it's not
the rest of the
affecting
workflow.
everything
Yep.
else. So it's like the more I do it, the easier it becomes.
Mm-hmm.
And then the more confident you are in leading everybody else in the team.
Yep.
Because you got to speak with graphics,
Mm-hmm.
you have to speak with audio.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have, as the switcher op,
Yeah.
you have to do that.
Yep. In a
Audio
moment's
doesn't,
notice.
yeah,
Yeah.
audio doesn't speak to anybody besides the switcher operator.
Right. Right. But in a moment's notice, you have to go from participant to leader. And you have to
Very
be
quickly.
secure in the fact that where you're leading people is to a destination that is going to work for not just your team, but for the people who expect everything else to work. If you're
Man,
frantic in that situation, it's going to make everybody else frantic.
you're basically the EIC on a gig if you're doing like a switcher gig.
Mm-hmm. For people who don't know, this executive in charge.
Yeah, engineer in charge. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're basically the EIC because you see everything.
Mm-hmm.
You see graphics, you see videos, you see audio, you see everything that has to do with the show.
Yep.
Everything has to come through you.
Yep.
Obviously, I mean, audio goes to its own thing, but if you're live streaming,
Mm-hmm.
audio got to come to me.
Yep. Yep.
So, like, if something doesn't look right in audio, I have to tell the audio guy, "Hey, can you boost me up 5 dB
Yep.
or take me down 3 dB?"
Mm-hmm.
If I play a video, I'm not getting any sound. Hey, I need for you to fix that.
Yeah.
Or if it's graphics, if I have to do graphics and switcher,
Mm-hmm.
then it's like, okay, now I got to go through, check every slide on a PowerPoint.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this does not look right. Let's call the client, see if they can fix this.
Yeah.
So you're basically talking to every element of audiovisual.
Mm-hmm.
The only other person that does that is, I don't know, like your production manager maybe,
Yeah. Yeah.
or your project manager.
Yeah.
Uh, Other than that, you're the guy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it's just the thing about it doesn't really matter what seat you're in. And this isn't just like an AVL situation. This is a life situation. It doesn't matter what seat you're in. Whatever seat it is that you find yourself
Always
in.
assume. Always
Yes.
assume you're gonna be the EIC.
Yeah. But be ready in a moment's notice to take the lead on whatever needs the
Yeah.
leadership. That's the thing that separates a lot of people who end up finding themselves very successful at something or just kind of riding the bench on something. Like you find a space in which you know you're secure in at a moment's notice, I can just step in and do this thing.
Man, like that event that me and you did, when we had to stream to, what was it, 5 different continents or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I know it's what
So I wasn't supposed to be the host.
yeah.
I wasn't
But
supposed to be the person collecting all of those feeds. It was supposed to be a guy in, I think, Puerto Rico or something like that, or Brazil, something like that.
I think it was Brazil, but we were going to Puerto Rico,
Puerto
somewhere in
Rico, like
Asia.
a few places here in the
Yeah,
US, Asia, Australia. I sent one out to Germany.
yeah, a lot of places.
Yeah, it was a lot,
Yeah.
but it just 5 minutes before show, everybody just came to my system,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't go to Brazil or Puerto Rico or wherever it was they supposed to go.
Yep.
So now I have to be the person in charge of everybody operating who's a part of this show
Yeah.
everywhere in the world. And I'm just like, what is
Yep.
going on? And you remember I was like running around trying to
Uh-huh.
swap out some stuff, rewiring, and I'm just
Yep.
like, yo, this is crazy.
And while you're working on that, I'm talking to the client like, look, expectations change. Need you to give us 10 minutes. Just give
Yeah.
us 10. If you can buy me 10, everything else will work.
They literally gave us 10 and we were able to make it happen.
Yeah.
It wasn't easy. That was not an easy show.
It wasn't.
But
And
it
we
went
I
off without a hitch.
think we gained a lot of confidence off of that one.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely. Because I mean, up to this day, they still send like Mike and Ahmed a lot of like thanks and stuff like that for making that show happen.
Yeah.
And this is what, 2 years later?
Yeah. Something like that. Yeah.
Oh, but anyway, we're out of time. Thank you, Jason, for coming.
Thank you, bro.
Appreciate it.
I
The reason I
appreciate it.
brought you on this podcast to do this, I guess, a series on mentorship is because I see you as a mentor,
I
and I've
appreciate that.
seen you mentor people, and it reminds me so much of my mentor. So it's like it just made sense.
Hmm.
So I mean, like we could do this again and maybe talk about something else, but I feel like that was the perfect thing to talk about today. I just want to say thank you for that.
I thank you, bro. I appreciate the confidence, man. For
You're
sure.
welcome.
For sure.